One of the features of gender ideology and of the policy and legislative moves to introduce sex self-identification and the inclusion of trans-identified men into every female-only space is the silencing of women's and men's, but mostly women's, right to critique or criticise these moves, or to raise any concerns about intended or unintended consequences for women and girls. When we try to discuss the consequences regarding women and girls' safety, our privacy, our dignity, fairness, etc., we're actively silenced. We're quickly closed down, marginalised. Our written work is censored. The less courageous among us self-censor. We're deplatformed, excluded from other unrelated campaigns. For example, I've been dropped from a refugee rights email list because I don't support the orthodoxy that trans women are women. We're sacked from jobs, or we're threatened with sacking if we speak. And IWD was advised less than a fortnight ago of a woman in a community women's organisation in Queensland who was sacked for disagreeing with training provided under the banner of LGBTIQ. It was just about transgender. We're shunned by former friends, sometimes friends of 30 and 40 years. We're dismissed by former left-wing activist colleagues as suddenly being right-wing Christians. And I do not, by saying that, I am not putting down the Christians amongst you. But I haven't been a Christian for more than 50 years, and I have never been right-wing. But suddenly, I'm a right-wing Christian. We're told we're bigots, transphobes, haters, that we deserve to be raped, burned, hung, killed in other ways. We're screamed at that we alienate the left, when in fact the left has alienated itself from women's liberation. When we want to have a meeting like this one, we have to do it secretly. We have to check every single registration to make sure that none of you are people who would do us harm. Those of us who oppose sex self-identification are a very small global movement, and we have valid concerns because, unlike gender ideology, our commitment is to maintain and extend women's and girls' rights. Women and girls face entrenched structural inequality, and this is denied by the new orthodoxy and the faux left and, of course, Big Pharma. Our theory and practice focuses on sex class analysis. Unlike gender ideology, we're not rooted in the promotion of individual identity. I want to discuss a number of recent local examples of efforts to silence the women who dissent. You'd expect that women's organisations would of course wish to defend the rights of women and girls. In my recent experience, however, they've been to the fore in closing down our voices. The recent Queensland campaign for abortion decriminalisation is a case in point. I was involved intensively for 2 years in the activist group Women's Abortion Rights Campaign, or WALK, and we were part of a broader campaign. WALK was kicked out of the campaign, the broader campaign, including by Children by Choice, who'd formerly been our allies, and Labour for Choice. At a meeting, Labour for Choice told WALK that they had been influenced in the decision to kick us out by Rainbow Labour. In emails, Children by Choice told WALK we were not inclusive because our view was that only women have pregnancies. Yes, guilty. And because we sometimes posted on our Facebook page pictures of uteruses. This is not inclusive, apparently, because pics of uteruses on an abortion rights page suggest only the people with female genitalia are female. Got us there, Children by Choice. More recently, the IWD Association has attempted to meet with 3 organisations from the progressive and left sector in Brisbane to discuss in a safe and respectful environment why sex self-identification is so dangerous to women and girls, and also why women's liberationists oppose porn and the trafficking and sex industry. I had friends and comrades in all three of those organisations. Not one of the three organisations would agree to talk with us in a safe and respectful environment. Two of the three wouldn't even respond to our request, no matter how many times it was made. The women's organisation, Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, does some excellent work advocating for global peace. WILF is a long-standing committed group of peace women, and I admire their work. And yet, they wouldn't even respond to our request to meet, let alone talk with us. Similarly, the Communist Party of Australia, not to be confused with the previous organisation by the same name that ran from 1920 to 1990 that was progressive on women's sex-based rights, the organisation currently called the Communist Party of Australia couldn't bring itself to respond to our request to meet. You know, the message I get from these groups is that we're to be quiet. We're not even worth talking to. We're perhaps subhuman, and our issues of rights, safety, fairness and dignity of women and girls are to be suppressed. We're thankful to the third progressive organisation we contacted, Australian Solidarity with Latin America, or ASLA, because they've written to us expressing support for our concerns about gender ideology erasing the rights of women and girls. Yay. And they've offered practical support for our IWD rally next year. Again, yay. But they still declined to meet with us. Even more recently, the Reclaim the Night organising group, having invited us to speak at the coming protest and to have a stall, subsequently told us a trans-identified man would also be speaking. Our safety couldn't be guaranteed. The word patriarchy shouldn't be used. And discriminatory language such as woman equals adult human female, you can get a sash with those words for $15 down the back, shouldn't be used. We were also advised that Reclaim the Night had accepted $500 from Greens councillor Jonathan Sri in return for not allowing transphobes, i.e. women's liberationists, to speak. We had no choice but to withdraw for our safety. We'd effectively been silenced from presenting a women's liberation speech at an event that was established in the late 70s by, guess who? Women's liberationists. I leave you with these words, intended to inspire all of us to speak our dissent. First, they came for the women in prison. And I did not speak out because women from my economic class don't usually go to prison. Then they came for the women in DV shelters and rape crisis centres, and I did not speak out because I never needed that kind of help. Then they came for girls and women's sports, and I did not speak out because I don't play sport. Then they came for women's university scholarships, and I did not speak out because I didn't need a scholarship to get to uni. Then they came for the women's liberationists, and I did not speak out because by then I was too scared. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Thank you.